After 6 weeks of dazzling football, drama, controversy, and heartbreak, Spain is the 2026 FIFA World Cup champion. The Spanish beating defending champions Argentina 1-0 in extra time at the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, with Spain captain Rodri winning the Golden Ball as the tournament's best player. So FIFA did not fix it for Argentina, and there's no golden boot for Lionel Messi in what could be his final World Cup. Now, that boot, by the way, went to France's Kylian Mbappe. Now, the tournament began with questions about politics, pricing, and who's in charge, but delivered something nobody quite expected. Football that reminded the world why it's called the beautiful game. Here's how former professional footballer PJ Roberts describes it.
I think it was a wonderful celebration of the obviously global strength of football, incredible support and fanatical engagement, not only in America and Canada and Mexico, but around the world, the viewing parties that occurred everywhere. We really saw countries and cultures celebrating the multicultural diversity of what football provides. No other sport provides this platform for engagement.
And somewhere between the politics and the ticket prices, something else happened. The world showed up in America, maybe a bit fearfully with a bit of uncertainty, and America fell in love. I'm Arnold Gay. Joining me are Mitch McCann, who was watching at a fan zone in Brooklyn, in New York, and in Singapore, Matt Mohan, our sports correspondent and the biggest football fan here among us three guys. Good to have you back for part 2 of this World Cup podcast. Mitch, I'll start with you. You were watching from nearby. Tell us about it. And is Spain the worthy champion?
Hello to you guys after what has been a very, very busy afternoon at a FIFA World Cup fan zone where thousands of supporters were seemingly having the time of their life, probably because most of them were Spanish fans and they'll be partying all night and all day tomorrow. Look, it's been a fantastic World Cup. I think from the perspective of those people that were there today, we even saw so many young children having such a great time playing football, all different activations they had. Look, to answer the question, Arnold, I think Spain really did deserve this. I think Matt would agree as well. They were dominant on the pitch. I think Argentina maybe had one or two genuine shots at goal at the most. So I think Spain really did deserve this, and perhaps the baton has been passed from Messi to a younger generation.
All right, more on that in a second. Matt, as a lifelong football fan and sports correspondent, same question. Are Spain, deserving champions? I mean, look, let's be honest. Argentina, played like England in the semi-final.
Yeah, I agree with Mitch completely. I think only one team really were aggressive. I mean, Argentina were aggressive, but in a different way. But Spain were really attacking for the second half, and they deserve to win. Full credit to them. They gave it a go. You could tell from the substitutions that they were the only team, in my view, that deserved a win, and they won. And I think football is all the better for them winning. As for the England comparison, I think at least England gave it a bit more of a go. They tried to shut up shop right at the end, but this performance from Argentina was simply not good enough.
Mitch briefly, mentioned the passing of the torch, and this is, of course, related to a picture that's been circulating of a younger Lionel Messi, giving a baby Yamal a bath. Now, so this is the man Argentina were counting on to win them back-to-back World Cups, and this is the boy now, 19 years old, I believe, who may have just ended that dream. So have we come full, circle? Would you agree with Mitch, that this represents something more and possibly, the last World Cup for Messi?
Look, I think Messi had a good tournament, right? He carried Argentina for many games, and he was instrumental in them getting where they were. But today he was, almost non-existent. And we talk about the passing of the torch. To be very honest, I don't think Yamal had a fantastic tournament. He played well in spells. Today, again, he was largely marked out of the game. But I think the victory here is a victory of the collective. Spain were a team, and Argentina was one man. And the keeper, probably two men, right? So, I see, yes, it's soon going to be Yamal's time, but I don't think he had a fantastic tournament, and I don't think this is the passing of the torch yet. But we're seeing two legends, namely Ronaldo and Messi. This is probably their last, and this is probably the start of the new era, but not so much the passing of the torch from one player to another.
Fair enough. Mitch, let's forget briefly about the World Cup. Not about the World Cup, but about the football. Okay, it's of course very important. I want to forget about the politics for a moment as well. You were there, and I want to know what Americans made of all the international fans who showed up, supporting their teams, doing things like the Viking row, the Scottish fans finishing all the beer, basically, where their team was playing. The sheer noise, the spectacle, and the color of it all. I mean, I talked about this in the intro. Do you see, or did you see America falling in love?
Very much so. And I think initially Americans might have been a little bit confused as to what was going on, who all these people are doing the Viking row in Times Square, because we have to remember football is nowhere near the biggest sport here in the United States. American football, or gridiron, is in basketball and baseball. This might be fourth, fifth, or sixth most popular sport. So I think for millions of Americans, they'll be thinking, who are all these people and why are there so many of them? I think at the start of the World Cup, even I was down near the Staten Island Ferry at the bottom of Manhattan, which is a bit of a tourist hotspot. And all of a sudden, there were dozens of people walking around in kilts. I had forgot that the World Cup was sort of starting the next day because it just wasn't such a massive story here in the US. But now we've seen, bars run out of beer in places like Boston because the Scots have been drinking them dry. And what we've seen is Americans really just, as you say, fall in love with the tourists and, an international community coming here to the US and seeing America in a positive light when they don't always see that at home where they've come from.
And Matt, let's go back to that particular fear. Visa issues was one concern, deportation, and even, ice raids during matches. But what visitors actually found were things like Walmart, giant food serving sizes, free refills, and, friendly Americans willing to learn the game. Things like what an offside is, what a hydration break is, which is fairly new, and so many became instant fans as well. You were among the international visitors to the World Cup. Do you think this has helped, the world change its view of the U.S. as previously defined, by Donald Trump, as Mitch was mentioning? I mean, did it change for you as well, Matt?
Yeah, I think it's clear we should make the distinction that the people are not represented by the politicians, right? They can make decisions, but the ordinary people on the ground are the ordinary people on the ground. And I agree that when I was there, I was treated very well. People were very nice, and friendly. And you could see, like, when I arrived in LA, the mood wasn't quite. It didn't feel like a World Cup yet. And gradually, as the tournament goes along, you start to feel like it. And I know that Mitch mentioned that the international visitors bring in their own flavor to the tournament, but I think the Americans did as well. There's one thing about Americans that when they go to sporting events, they enjoy themselves. Obviously it matters whether the team wins or loses, but they enjoy themselves. And I think because of that, the World Cup felt like a celebration. It wasn't too serious all the time. There was an element of winning and losing, but there was also a fun element where people just wanted to have fun, wanted to learn about others, learn about the sport. And I think that was really refreshing.
A week into the tournament, Matt, we were talking about this. There were a lot of critics about the World Cup. 20 teams, diluted group stages, not enough quality. 104 matches later. Do you think, all this has been debunked? Has the football justified it, and also delivered a worthy spectacle for everyone, the billions of people who've been watching around the world?
Yeah, I mean, before getting into that question, I think one thing I've realized is that at any major sporting event before the tournament, there's always going to be noise, there's always going to be criticism, and this is no different, right? So it happened before Qatar, it happened before the Tokyo Olympics, it will happen again and again in the future. With regards to the expanded tournament, honestly, I think most people enjoyed it. From my sensing, I don't think there were very lopsided games. And one thing I noticed is that teams are catching up. We see teams like Egypt stretch Argentina, Cape Verde stretch Argentina, DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo stretch England. So there were so many close games, right? And I think I'm biased because I'm a football fan, but I enjoyed it. And I think most football fans would say that they enjoyed it.
And Mitch, your thoughts as a new fan of football?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm no expert like Matt is, Arnold, I would have to say. But look, as someone that's new to football, I mean, I loved it. I was racing home for work to watch the games. There was nothing better than in the group stage of the Football World Cup where there were like 4 or 5 games a day. I thought this is amazing, especially coming into a sport. You can watch so many different teams. And there were so many great storylines, right? Like Norway were doing so well and everyone was into Haaland. I'd never even heard of Erling Haaland before this. And now I love the guy. I follow on Instagram. And so I think it offers something for people that aren't, totally into the sport. And I think actually part of the reason this has been successful for America is because it's got so many more people into this game. And so I think from FIFA's perspective, it probably has been a success just for that reason.
Matt, the English Premier League is kind of like a religion here in Asia, and we know that many fans adopt England, as their, if you like, second home team along their national, teams. So I'm wondering, how badly was the defeat by Argentina in the semi-final felt?
I can only speak for what I've seen here in Singapore, and obviously you're right that some Singaporeans do pick England as their second or third team, right, after the national team. And I think there is a sense of what could have been, especially given the manner of that game, because they were leading and they threw away a lead, right, and they tried to shut up shop. So I think there's a sense of, almost we could have got there and we could have got to the final. But I think in their heart of hearts, they know that probably if they got to the final, they are not beating Spain. So I think it's third place overall is not a bad finish, but they will probably just have hoped to make the final. So it's there's a bit of sadness, but not overwhelmingly so.
Okay, fair enough. But I have also to say that nobody really remembers the runner-up or the third place finisher, though. Isn't that true? Mitch, on to you now. We last spoke, about the World Cup 6 weeks ago. And one question we asked was whether it was FIFA or the Trump administration that was running this World Cup. And then, that incident happened. Team USA's Folarin Balogun was suspended. But then Trump, as we know, called, FIFA's chief, Gianni Infantino. Balogun's red card was quickly overturned. Didn't make a difference in the end. As we know, Belgium thrashed the US. But the question is, has FIFA permanently surrendered its credibility as an independent governing body, you think?
Well, look, Arnold, I think people would be asking that question even before the tournament when Infantino gave Donald Trump the FIFA Peace Prize, which seemed to be sort of this made-up award that was given to Donald Trump to curry favour. I think a lot of people question that. So I think when it gets to 2027 and there's a FIFA Congress and Gianni Infantino is going for the presidency again, which he says he will, I think people will look back at some of the incidents during this World Cup and think, well, who was really in control here? Because it's really important to say that on one hand, yes, this was a successful tournament, but on the other hand, there was so many issues before and at some points during it. I mean, I think Matt pointed out something really important before. Whether it's an Olympic Games, a Commonwealth Games, anything, there are always issues that come up before the tournament, and then we get on with it. But even when we got on with it, there was the Balogun issue with Donald Trump, and there are still people sitting in Haiti that wanted to watch their team, and they couldn't. And so there are a number of issues there. So I think as we reflect on the tournament for its success, we also need to reflect on the issues that came up. And look, I have to say that Balogun issue, that everything was going quite well up until that point. Donald Trump had stayed out of things. There was no FIFA drama, and that really changed things. And if the USA had won that game, which they didn't, as you mentioned, by a mile, we'd still be talking about, what could have been for the US. I think there was a really disappointing situation for football fans generally.
And Matt, from outside the United States, what has it done, you think, to football's reputation?
Yeah, I mean, just first on the Balogun incident, right? I think from what I observe, I don't think it helped the team at all. In fact, I think it hurt them, because when I watched that game and I saw the way the United States came out in the first 15-20 minutes, they were so poor, and they had been great in the tournament up to that game. So conversely, he might have thought that that would help them, but I don't think it did. And there were people that could have come on for Balogun if he had been suspended. So that's that. It didn't help. From Asia, I think it's just a shrug. It's par for the course. We've seen like the Peace Prize, the issues with immigration and obviously the Balogun incident. Because I mean, here in Singapore, people don't really support the United States as a team, as a second team or third team. So that's not such a big deal to them. But it got people behind Belgium. I see friends posting about, justice has prevailed and stuff like that. Whereas before this, they didn't care about either team. Right, but there's that sense of injustice, and so that was probably the feeling that Belgium were hard done by this, and let's support Belgium because justice has to be done.
Right. Matt, I want to stay this part of the world. 8 teams from Asia at this World Cup, more than ever before. I know you definitely watched Japan draw with the Netherlands. You watched Australia beat Turkey. You were there when South Korea, opened with a win as well. So what is your honest verdict now that it's all over? Has there been genuine progress for Asian football? Or is this just that there are more matches because of the expanded format?
Yeah, I think when you talk about progress, the progress has been for the nations who typically won't be there to be able to compete at a global stage. People have watched Uzbekistan. The way they played against Colombia was decent. People have seen Iraq score at the World Cup, Jordan as well. So that I consider to be progress. In terms of the overall performance of Asian teams, I don't think it was good enough. I think South Korea really disappointed with the way they played. Some of it has to be blame on the coach, but they were just not good enough. I was there actually for the second game where they faced Mexico and they lost, right? And even Japan, I know they gave a hard fight against Brazil and they gave a decent account of themselves, but the draw was tough. But that was a game they could have won. The Brazil team is beatable, as Norway has shown, right? But Japan got a goal. And they decided, let's try and defend. Let's play a bit differently. And Brazil took full advantage. So overall, I don't think it was a great tournament for Asian teams in terms of purely performance-wise. But it was good that teams got exposure. New nations had a chance to compete at the World Cup, and I think that will make them stronger.
Okay, so these teams in question, Spain obviously will be celebrating, but many teams, including the teams from Asia, will be looking ahead to tournaments this part of the world, and of course to the World Cup in 2030 as well, which goes to Spain, to Portugal, Morocco, but actually across 3 continents as well, because we have those games in South America. So after everything that we've watched, the politics, the prices, the Balogun intervention, the fan joy, that's very important, and of course the football, is there an important, or is there one important lesson that host nations should take, from this World Cup, Mitch?
I think the one lesson that should be taken from this, if we consider the next World Cup and future World Cups, is the importance of keeping politics out of the football. Because while I've been at the fan zone today and thousands of people have been in the stadium, do you know who didn't have a good time? The Haitians who weren't allowed to fly here, the Iranian team that had to keep going and back and forth from Mexico because of visa issues, the Somali referee who was sent home. And so the more politics are involved in an international game like this, the more difficult it is for everyone in the international community to enjoy it. And that's supposed to be what this is about. So I keep going back to the same point, and that is that while this is a successful tournament on the whole, I think there are many sort of issues that were raised here that the next hosts will be very cautious not to repeat.
I agree with Mitch, but also I probably want to add that at the end of the day, football will always win. You can have all these things going on, but football wins, right? And we've seen it again at many tournaments, and this was no exception, right? Despite all these things happening, people just come together to enjoy football, and you don't need to be a football fan to enjoy football. So it is an inclusive sport, and it's a sport that lets people enjoy and lets people have fun and brings people together. And so at the end of the day, you just keep things simple, don't intervene, let football play out, and you have a great tournament. So we had most of that, and we still have a great tournament, but there was that one aspect that's like what Mitch said that kind of spoiled it a little bit.
Okay. So I want to quickly pick up on this whole idea of fan inclusion here. Mitch, you mentioned it, in some detail. But the other aspect of this is how FIFA has Some call it hyper commercialized, the whole situation. Dynamic pricing is one thing, and that has meant obviously very high ticket prices and fans not being able to attend matches or fly to the US, Canada, or Mexico the way they would have wanted to. Is this something that will be, I guess, carried over, or do you see the host countries doing their level best to make sure that football remains accessible to more people? Matt, I'll start with you.
When I talk about football being inclusive, it means like you don't have to be there to enjoy it, right? So people in Singapore enjoy it, people all over the world enjoy it, and they may not necessarily be there. And so back to the ticket pricing issue, I think FIFA is a successful tournament for FIFA for sure, right? Because look at the stadiums, they're full, right? So people are definitely going to pay. But you're absolutely right that this risks at alienating 99% of the people who cannot afford to be there. I would think that things might change at the next World Cup, but the success in terms of how well tickets have sold at this one, it will be tempting to FIFA to say, let's do it again because of how well it's gone down in the US. But again, the consumer market in the US and the consumer market in Europe is different.
Exactly.
So there could be some pushback. Yeah.
Mitch, your thoughts?
Yeah, I find this a bit of a tricky one because on one hand, I think it's unfair that people can't go to an inclusive sport like football. But on the other hand, I can hear FIFA say, well, all that money is, a lot of that money is then going to go to places like the DRC, like Fiji, like the Solomon Islands to help them get better. But I think at some point when the cheapest ticket to the final is $10,000 that is way too much money. So I think there needs to be a middle ground there. And I think that is really something, to your point, Arnold, that the next hosts of the World Cup will be really cautious of, because that's a bad headline they could probably try and avoid.
All right, gentlemen, we leave it there. But before I go, I just want to put it out there that the two of you picked France to be the champion for the 2026 World Cup final.
Yeah, we did.
Just saying. But, all the same, thanks, guys, for joining me again for, if you like, the finale, of our podcast for the World Cup as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Arnold. All the best.
Thanks, Arnold. Cheers.
Thank you. I'm Arnold Gay. We'll see you at the next CNA Correspondent podcast. Thanks for watching. It was brought to you by Tiffany Ang, Ned Fatal Vero, Zikri Ayman, and Craig Dale.